Part 1. Captain Jake Morrison stood quietly on the bridge of the Earth battlecruiser Valiant. His dark eyes watched the empty space ahead through the main viewing screen. 3 years had passed since humanity forced the Galactic Council to recognize Earth as an independent planet. The memory of that war still burned fresh in everyone's mind. The galaxy learned something important during that conflict. Humans came from a death world. Earth was so dangerous that its people evolved differently from other species. They were hunters who never gave up. They were warriors who became stronger during chaos. Most importantly, they were a species that refused to surrender even when death seemed certain. Lieutenant Amy Parker sat at her station, monitoring the ship's sensors. She was young but skilled at her job. Her fingers moved across the controls as she checked the readings. Suddenly she stopped and leaned forward. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal," she said clearly. Jake turned his head toward her. "Where is it coming from?" "The Kelvar system, sir. About 3 light-years from our current position." Jake felt his jaw tighten. The Kelvar were peaceful insect-like aliens. They lived in massive hive cities and valued harmony above all else. When the Council tried to quarantine Earth and prevent humans from traveling the stars, the Kelvar had abstained from voting. They hadn't helped humanity, but they hadn't attacked either. "What does the message say?" Jake asked. Amy worked quickly to clean up the signal. "It's breaking up badly, but I can make out several words: invasion, civilian casualties. They're requesting immediate assistance from anyone who can hear them." She paused and her face turned pale. "Captain, they're under attack by the Zolthon horde." The bridge fell completely silent. Every crew member knew about the Zolthon. They were raiders who traveled in massive fleets, consuming everything they found. The Zolthon were carnivorous aliens who saw other species as nothing more than food and resources. Even the powerful Galactic Council struggled to fight them. Commander Lisa Hayes stepped forward from her position. She was Jake's second in command and had served with him for 7 years. "Captain, we need to think carefully about this. The Kelvar never helped us when we were fighting for our survival. The Council will eventually send a response fleet. This isn't our responsibility." Jake stared at the distress signal on the screen. It pulsed weakly like a dying heartbeat. He thought about the families down on that planet. He imagined children hiding in shelters while death rained from the sky. He pictured parents holding their young ones, praying that someone would answer their call for help. "Amy, how long until the Council can get a fleet to the Kelvar system?" he asked. Amy checked the data on her screen. "At least 48 hours, sir. Maybe longer if they have to gather ships from multiple sectors." "And how long do the Kelvar have before their defenses fail?" Amy's voice was quiet when she answered. "Based on what I'm seeing in the signal, maybe 6 hours. Probably less." Jake made his decision without hesitation. "Set course for the Kelvar system. Maximum speed. Send a message to the rest of the 5th Fleet. Tell Commander Grant on the Defender and Captain Lee on the Ranger that we're answering the distress call. Any ship that can keep up should follow us." Lisa moved closer to Jake and lowered her voice so only he could hear. "Sir, if we do this, we might start another war. The Council will say we're expanding beyond our territory. They'll call it human aggression." Jake looked at his old friend, then let them say whatever they want. "We didn't fight our way to the stars just to become cold and heartless like the Council. Humanity answers when someone calls for help. We always have. We always will." Lisa studied his face for a moment, then nodded. She knew Jake well enough to understand that his mind was made up. More importantly, she agreed with him. "Aye, sir. I'll make sure the crew is ready for combat." Within minutes, the Valiant's powerful engines came to life. The ship turned and began accelerating toward the Kelvar system. Behind her, 6 other human warships broke away from their patrol routes and followed. The Defender was a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to level a small moon. The Ranger was fast and deadly, built for hit-and-run attacks. The others were destroyers and frigates, each one carrying brave crews who had volunteered to follow Jake into danger. Jake returned to his command chair and sat down. He pressed a button that opened a channel to the entire ship. "All hands, this is the captain speaking. We're heading into combat against the Zolthon horde. They're attacking a peaceful world that asked for help. The Galactic Council isn't coming to save them. That means it's up to us." He paused and looked around the bridge at his crew. "I know some of you are thinking that the Kelvar aren't our friends. You're right. They never helped us when we needed it. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that they're asking for help now, and we have the power to give it. We're going to show the galaxy what humanity really stands for. Not conquest, not revenge. We stand for protecting those who can't protect themselves. Throughout the ship, crew members heard their captain's words. Some were scared, some were excited, but all of them understood the importance of what they were about to do. They checked their weapons. They prepared the fighter craft in the launch bays. They made sure the medical stations were ready for wounded. Everyone had a job and everyone knew their duty. In the navigation room, Lieutenant Chris Porter plotted the fastest course to the Kelvar system. He was the best navigator in the fleet, capable of threading a ship through dangerous space that would make other pilots panic. "We'll arrive in approximately 4 hours and 30 minutes, he reported. Jake nodded. 4.5 hours. They would arrive with maybe 30 minutes to spare before the Kelvar defenses collapsed completely. It would be close. Very close. As the Valiant raced through space at speeds that pushed her engines to their limits, Jake sat quietly and thought about what was coming. The Zolthon horde had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. They were experienced fighters with powerful ships. Humanity had only been in space for a few decades. By all logical reasoning, 7 human ships shouldn't make a difference against a Zolthon fleet. But Jake knew something that the Zolthon didn't. Humans weren't logical. They were stubborn. They were creative. And most importantly, they fought harder when they were protecting others than when they were protecting themselves. The journey to the Kelvar system felt like it took forever. Jake reviewed tactical data about the Zolthon. He studied reports from previous encounters. He planned attack strategies with Lisa and the other officers. Every minute that passed was another minute that Kelvar civilians were dying. Finally, Amy spoke up. "Captain, we're approaching the edge of the Kelvar system, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in 30 seconds. Jake stood up from his chair. "All hands, battle stations. Prepare for immediate combat. Fighter squadrons, prepare to launch on my command." The ship trembled slightly as it dropped back into normal space. The main viewing screen flickered, and then showed them the Kelvar home planet. Even from this distance, Jake could see the fires burning on the surface. Orbital defense platforms were exploding one by one as Zolthon warships hammered them with weapons fire. "Tactical report," Jake ordered sharply. Amy's fingers flew across her controls. "I count 17 Zolthon capital ships in orbit around the planet. Approximately 200 smaller strike craft. The Kelvar defense force has been almost completely destroyed. I'm only reading 3 frigates still operational and they're badly damaged." Lisa appeared at Jake's side. 7 ships against 17. "The odds aren't good, sir." Jake allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man about to do something dangerous and probably crazy. "The odds are never good. That's when we do our best work." He opened a communication channel to all 7 human ships. "All vessels, this is Morrison. We're going in. Stay flexible. Stay aggressive. And remember what we're fighting for. Those are families down there. Let's give them a chance to see tomorrow." The human fleet charged forward into battle. In the distance, the Zolthon warships began turning to face them. They had no idea what was about to hit them. Part 2, the Kelvar home planet looked like it was dying. Fires burned across 3 continents. Smoke rose into the atmosphere in massive black columns. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Valiant as Zolthon warships circled the planet, like vultures around a dying animal. "They've detected us, sir," Lieutenant Amy Parker announced. Her voice was steady despite the fear that Jake knew she must be feeling. 6 Zolthon vessels are breaking orbit and moving to intercept us." Jake studied the tactical display in front of him. The Zolthon ships were biological in nature. They were grown rather than built, with hulls that looked like dark chitinous armor. Weapon pods glowed with green light along their sides. These ships had destroyed entire civilizations. They were designed for one purpose only: to kill and consume. Commander Lisa Hayes stood beside Jake's command chair. "The remaining 11 ships are staying in orbit. They're continuing their attack on the surface. They're splitting their forces," Jake said quietly. "They think 6 ships are enough to deal with us. That's their first mistake." He opened a communication channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships execute attack pattern Delta 7. Break formation and engage independently. Target the approaching vessels with everything we have. Don't give them time to coordinate their attack." The 7 human warships scattered in different directions like a school of fish evading a predator. It was a tactic that came from Earth's naval history, adapted for space combat. The Zolthon had probably never seen anything like it. They were used to enemies who fought in organized formations following predictable patterns. The Valiant surged forward, her engines burning at maximum power. Human ships were built differently than council vessels. They were designed to exceed their theoretical limits. Every system had backup systems. Every component was engineered to survive extreme conditions. Humans built things the same way they did everything else, tough and able to take punishment. Range to target 15,000 kilometers, reported Lieutenant Chris Porter from the weapons station. Railguns charged and ready. Missiles loaded. Fire when ready, Jake ordered calmly. The Valiant shuddered as her railguns fired. Solid metal projectiles shot through space at incredible speeds. They were simple weapons. No fancy energy beams or plasma bursts, just chunks of tungsten traveling at a fraction of light speed. The Zalthon had never encountered weapons like this before. The lead Zalthon ship's shields flickered as the railgun rounds hit. The shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid projectiles with massive kinetic force. After 3 direct hits, the shields collapsed completely. The next rounds punched through the biological hull, tearing into the ship's internal structure. Direct hit, Porter called out. Target 1 is venting atmosphere and losing power. The other human ships opened fire at the same moment. Missiles streaked across the void, their engines burning bright. The Zalthon tried to return fire, but they were confused by the scattered formation. They couldn't focus their weapons on a single target. Jake watched as 3 Zalthon ships exploded within the first minute of combat. The remaining 3 tried to retreat back to the safety of the main fleet, but it was too late. The human ships pursued them relentlessly, weapons firing continuously. The Zalthon main fleet is responding, Amy announced. 8 more ships are breaking orbit and heading our way. Lisa gripped the railing in front of her. Now we're facing 11 ships. Still not great odds? We don't need great odds, Jake replied. We just need to make them think twice about continuing their attack. One of the retreating Zalthon ships turned and fired a desperate shot at the Valiant. The energy beam hit the forward shields, causing them to flare bright blue. The ship shook from the impact, but the shields held. Shield strength at 70%, Amy reported. Minor power fluctuations on Deck 3, but nothing serious. Jake opened a channel to all human ships. Concentrate fire on the reinforcements. Make every shot count. Porter, prepare a full missile spread. Target the largest ship in the approaching group. The weapons officer worked quickly. Missiles ready, sir. Targeting solution locked. Fire. 20 missiles launched from the Valiant at once. They spread out slightly and then converged on a massive Zalthon battlecruiser. The alien ship tried to shoot down the incoming missiles, but there were too many. Explosions blossomed across its hull as missile after missile found its target. The battlecruiser didn't explode immediately. Instead, it began to break apart slowly, pieces of its biological structure drifting away as internal fires consumed it from within. The crew aboard the Valiant could see small shapes being ejected into space as the dying ship tried to evacuate. Jake felt no satisfaction at the sight. War was never something to celebrate, but he knew this was necessary. Every Zalthon ship they destroyed was one less ship attacking innocent civilians below. Lieutenant Kevin Briggs led his fighter squadron into the chaos. He was one of the best pilots humanity had ever produced. His fighter was small and fast, darting between the larger capital ships like a bird among giants. His wingman, Lieutenant Nicole Grant, stayed close beside him. Fox 3, Kevin called over the radio as he launched a missile at a Zalthon strike craft. The missile hit perfectly and the enemy fighter vanished in a brief flash of light. Nice shot, Nicole responded, but I'm still ahead of you by 4. The battle isn't over yet. Down on the planet's surface, the Kelvar watched the battle unfold on their sensor screens. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The humans, the species that the entire galaxy had called dangerous and unpredictable, were fighting to save them. Ships were being damaged. Humans were dying, all to protect a world that had never offered them friendship. Governor Hickstar stood in the command center of Hive Prime, the capital city. He was old by Kelvar standards, his chitinous body scarred from a long life. He watched the tactical display showing the space battle and felt something he had rarely experienced. Hope. How many human ships are there? He asked his aide. Only 7, Governor. They're outnumbered more than 2 to 1. And yet they're winning, Hickstar said softly. They're actually winning. In space, the battle continued to rage. The Zalthon were beginning to realize they had underestimated their enemy. These humans fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness. They took risks that no sane species would consider. They pushed their ships beyond safe limits and treated weapons fire like a minor inconvenience. The Valiant took another hit, this time on the port side. The shields held, but Jake could feel the impact through the deck plates. "Damage report," he demanded. "Port shield generator is overheating," Amy replied quickly. "Automatic cooling systems are engaged. We can maintain combat operations, but another hit in the same location could be serious." "Noted. Keep us moving. Don't give them an easy target." Lisa pointed at the tactical display. "Sir, 3 Zolthon ships are trying to flank us. They're attempting to surround the fleet." Jake studied the enemy movements. The Zolthon were adapting to human tactics. They were learning. But Jake had spent years studying military history from Earth. He knew dozens of strategies that no alien had ever seen. All ships, execute emergency scatter pattern, regroup at coordinates Echo 77, prepare for concentrated fire on my mark. The human fleet broke apart again, each ship racing in a different direction. The Zolthon ships pursuing them became confused, unable to decide which target to follow. In those crucial seconds of hesitation, the human ships reached their rally point and turned as one. All vessels, fire together, target the center ship of their formation. 7 ships fired simultaneously. The concentrated firepower overwhelmed the target's shields instantly and tore the ship apart. Before the Zolthon could react, the human fleet scattered again and repositioned for another coordinated strike. Jake allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Zolthon fought like pack hunters, relying on numbers and coordination, but humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. They knew how to turn an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. "Captain, the remaining Zolthon ships are breaking off," Amy announced with surprise in her voice. "They're retreating back to the main fleet." "Don't let them go," Jake ordered. "Keep the pressure on them. Make them run all the way back." The human fleet pursued the retreating Zolthon vessels, weapons firing continuously. 2 more alien ships were destroyed before they could reach the safety of their main fleet. The surviving ships limped back to orbit, trailing debris and atmosphere. Jake opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "Well done, everyone. Regroup and assess damage." "We're not finished yet." Lisa turned to him with concern on her face. "Jake, we won that engagement, but we took damage. If we go after the main fleet now, we might not survive." "I know," Jake admitted. "But look at the planet. The Zolthans stopped their attack. They're focusing on us now instead of the civilians." "That's what we wanted." Amy interrupted them. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the planet. It's Governor Hickstar of the Kelvar government. Put him through." A holographic image appeared above the communication console. It showed a large insect-like being with compound eyes and multiple limbs. His translator device rendered his clicking speech into words humans could understand. "Captain Morrison, this is Governor Hickstar. We watched what you just did. You came to help us." Part 3. 2 days had passed since the battle at Kelvar Prime. The human fleet remained in orbit, their ships bearing scars from the fighting. The Zolthon horde had retreated after losing 12 of their 17 ships. The remaining 5 had fled into deep space, leaving the Kelvar world battered but alive. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the streets of Hive Prime, the Kelvar capital city. Buildings around him showed damage from the orbital bombardment. Repair crews worked day and night to fix what had been broken. Medical teams treated the wounded in temporary field hospitals set up in public squares. The Kelvar civilians watched Jake as he passed. Their compound eyes followed his movements with a mixture of curiosity and gratitude. Some of them approached to touch his hand or offer gifts of food. Others simply stood and stared, unable to fully process that this human had risked everything to save them. A young Kelvar child approached Jake cautiously. She was small, her chitinous body still soft and light-colored with youth. She held a translator device in her small manipulator appendages. "Are you the captain who fought the bad aliens?" she asked through the translator. Jake knelt down to her level, making himself less intimidating. "I am. My name is Jake. Why did you help us?" "We never helped you when the council attacked your world." It was a simple question, but it cut straight to the heart of everything. Jake thought carefully about his answer. "Because someone needed help and I could give it." That's what good people do, no matter where they come from. The child considered this, then reached out and touched Jake's face gently. "You're not scary like the council said. You're nice." Before Jake could respond, Commander Lisa Hayes appeared beside him. Her expression was serious. "Sir, we have a situation. The Galactic Council fleet just arrived at the edge of the system. They're demanding to speak with you immediately. Jake stood up and gave the child a reassuring smile before turning to Lisa. How many ships? 20 council vessels. They're not in attack formation, but they're armed and ready. Jake sighed. He had known this was coming. The council couldn't let humanity's actions go unchallenged. Patch them through to my communicator. A holographic image appeared in front of Jake, showing Ambassador Trelovic of the Vax species. The Vax were crystalline beings who valued logic and order above all else. Trelovic's body flickered with light as he spoke, a sign of agitation among his people. Captain Morrison, you have violated the Treaty of Proxima by deploying military forces outside human-controlled space without council authorization. This is an act of aggression that cannot be tolerated. Jake kept his voice calm and respectful. Ambassador, we responded to a distress call from a sovereign world under attack. The same distress call that your council received. The council was mobilizing an appropriate response, Trelovic replied stiffly. Your interference was unnecessary and violates established protocols. Your appropriate response would have arrived after the Kelvar were dead, Jake said, his voice hardening slightly. We were here. We had the capability to help. So we did what was right. Trelovic's crystalline features pulsed with more intense light. The Zalthon Horde will see this as proof that humans are expanding their territory. Your actions may have started a war that will consume entire sectors of space. We didn't start anything, Jake replied firmly, but if the Zalthon want to test humanity again, they know where to find us. We'll be ready. Lisa leaned close to Jake and whispered urgently, Sir, sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. 43 vessels just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's outer edge. Jake felt his blood run cold. Had the Zalthon returned with massive reinforcements? The human fleet was damaged from the first battle. They wouldn't survive against such overwhelming numbers. But Lieutenant Amy Parker's voice came through Jake's communicator with confusion rather than alarm. Captain, those aren't Zalthon ships. I'm reading signatures from multiple different species. Kelvar vessels, but also Terrian cruisers, Solax frigates, and at least 6 other council races. The holographic display expanded to show multiple figures appearing beside Ambassador Trelovic. One of them was Governor Hickstar of the Kelvar. Another was a reptilian female wearing a military uniform that Jake didn't recognize. Governor Hickstar spoke first, his translator making his clicking speech understandable. Ambassador Trelovic, I am here to formally request that the Council recognize Earth's intervention as a lawful act of humanitarian aid. Furthermore, I am announcing that Kelvar Prime is entering into a mutual defense agreement with humanity. Effective immediately. Trelovic's crystalline body pulsed so brightly it was almost painful to look at. Governor, you cannot make such a decision without Council approval. There are procedures that must be followed. I can and I have, Hickstar replied with surprising firmness. My people were hours away from extinction. The Council debated and discussed while we died. Humanity acted without hesitation. That is a difference we will never forget. The reptilian female stepped forward. I am Admiral Kesivara of the Terrian Confederation. My government has also decided to enter into a defense agreement with Earth. We watched what the humans did here. They fought not for conquest or profit, but to protect the innocent. That is the kind of ally we want. One by one, other figures appeared in the holographic display. A Solax merchant named Pelox, representatives from independent colonies, leaders from worlds that the Council had ignored or exploited. They all spoke with similar messages. They had watched humanity's actions, and they wanted to stand with Earth rather than continue following the Council's leadership. Jake watched in amazement as the political structure of the galaxy shifted before his eyes. The Council had feared humanity's military power and had tried to contain it through treaties and restrictions. But they had never considered what would happen if humans used that power to protect others rather than conquer them. Ambassador Trelovic's holographic form dimmed significantly. This is unprecedented. The Council will need time to review these developments and determine an appropriate response. You do that, Jake said quietly. While you're reviewing and debating, we'll be out here answering calls for help. Because that's what humans do. We protect those who need protection. The transmission ended, leaving Jake and Lisa standing in the damaged street of Hive Prime. Around them, Kelvar civilians had gathered to watch the exchange. They had heard everything through their own communication devices. Governor Hickstar appeared in person a few minutes later, walking through the crowd with several of his advisors. He approached Jake and performed a complex gesture that Jake's cultural database identified as a sign of deep respect among the Kelvar. "Captain Morrison, you have changed everything," the governor said. "For centuries, the small worlds have lived in fear. Fear of raiders like the Zolthon. Fear of the Council's control. But now we see another option. We see strength used for protection rather than domination." Jake shook his head. "Governor, I'm just a ship captain. I saw people who needed help and I provided it. Any decent person would have done the same." "But they didn't," Hickstar replied. "The Council didn't come. The other great powers didn't come. Only humanity came. That means something, Captain. It means everything." Over the next few hours, more ships continued to arrive in the Kelvar system. Some brought supplies and medical aid. Others brought military forces to help defend against any potential Zolthon return. But all of them came because they had heard what humanity did. Lisa and Jake stood together on the observation deck of the Valiant, watching the growing fleet through the large windows. Ships from a dozen different species held position around the planet, their running lights creating a beautiful pattern against the darkness of space. "We've started something big," Lisa said softly. "This is going to change the entire balance of power in the galaxy." Jake nodded slowly. The Council maintained their authority through a combination of military power and bureaucratic control. They made smaller worlds dependent on them for protection, but that protection always came with strings attached. It came with rules and restrictions and loss of independence. And now those worlds have another option. Lisa finished his thought. "They can stand with us instead." "Not just with us," Jake corrected. "With each other. We're not trying to build an empire or replace the Council. We're showing everyone that there's another way. That worlds can cooperate freely, protect each other voluntarily without giving up their sovereignty." A communication alert sounded, and Amy's voice came through. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Fleet Command. Admiral Stevens wants to speak with you directly." Jake activated the holographic communicator. The image of Admiral Stevens appeared, showing a gray-haired man with stern features and tired eyes. He had commanded Earth's defense forces during the war with the Council, and he understood the weight of command better than most. "Captain Morrison, I've been monitoring the situation. The civilian government has met an emergency session and authorized me to inform you that Earth is formally recognizing these new defense agreements. Furthermore, we're committing additional fleet assets to support what's being called the Coalition of Free Worlds." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle more heavily on his shoulders. "Sir, I need to be clear." Part 4. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Kelvar Prime. Captain Jake Morrison now found himself in a situation he had never imagined possible. He was sitting at a large conference table with representatives from 17 different alien species, and none of them were there to threaten Earth. The meeting was held aboard Unity 7, a Kelvar orbital station that had been hastily repaired after the Zolthon attack. The main chamber had been converted into a diplomatic hall. Translation devices hovered above each delegation, turning their various forms of communication into something everyone could understand. Guards from multiple species stood at the entrances, a visible symbol of cooperation between former strangers. Governor Hickstar stood at the head of the table and began speaking. His translator rendered his clicking speech into clear words. "We have gathered here because the galaxy has reached an important moment in history. For too long, the Galactic Council has failed to protect its member worlds from threats. We have paid tribute, we have followed their rules, and we have watched our people suffer while the Council debated appropriate responses." Murmurs of agreement moved through the chamber. Jake noticed Ambassador Trelvik sitting in an observation section reserved for Council representatives. The crystalline being's body was dim, suggesting either embarrassment or anger. Admiral Kesavara of the Terrian Confederation rose to speak. She was a tall reptilian with scales that shimmered in shades of green and blue. 3 cycles ago, Zolthon raiders attacked one of our mining colonies. We sent a distress call to the Council following all proper protocols. By the time their response fleet arrived, 6,000 of my people were dead. The Council expressed regret and promised to review their procedures. She paused, her golden eyes sweeping across the room. "They are still reviewing." A Solax merchant named Pelox spoke next. The Solax were small gray-skinned beings known throughout the galaxy for their trading networks. The Council maintains its power through control. They keep smaller worlds dependent on their protection, but that protection comes with heavy costs. Restrictions on trade, limits on military development, loss of sovereignty. We have all paid these prices. Jake listened carefully. These weren't radicals or warmongers. They were practical beings who had simply grown tired of a system that promised security, but delivered only control and exploitation. Commander Lisa Hayes sat beside Jake and leaned over to whisper. They want to form a counter-council with us at the center. This is much bigger than we initially thought. Governor Hickstar's compound eyes focused on Jake. Captain Morrison, humanity is new to the galactic community. But you have already shown us something the Council has forgotten. You have shown us that power should be used to protect, not to control. We wish to propose a coalition. An alliance of free worlds that will provide mutual defense without demanding sovereignty in return. We want Earth to be a founding member of this alliance. Jake felt the weight of every eye in the room upon him. He chose his words very carefully. Governor, with all respect, I'm a starship captain, not a politician. This kind of decision needs to be made by people with much more authority than I have. We understand, Hickstar replied, but we need to know something. Will humanity consider this proposal seriously? Will you stand with us not just once, but as partners for the future? Before Jake could answer, the chamber doors burst open suddenly. A young Kelvar officer rushed in, his translator device nearly falling from his manipulator appendages. He was clearly panicked. Forgive the interruption, but we have received urgent transmissions from the frontier worlds. Multiple colonies are under attack. The Zalthon horde has returned with their entire fleet. They're sending a message to anyone who might consider allying with the humans. The room erupted into chaos. Delegates jumped to their feet. Some shouted questions. Others activated their communication devices to contact their home worlds. Admiral Kesavara was already speaking rapidly into her communicator, calling her fleet to battle readiness. Jake stood up, and his command presence cut through the noise like a blade. Where are they attacking? The Kelvar officer pulled up a holographic star map. Points of red light marked the locations under assault. 4 systems simultaneously. New Terra's Solax Minor and 2 independent colonies. Based on the reports, they're not conducting raids. They're attempting to completely exterminate the populations. Lisa was already running calculations in her head. If they're hitting 4 systems at once, they've committed their entire force. This isn't about resources or conquest anymore. They're trying to make an example. Jake turned to face the assembled delegates. How many ships can we gather? Admiral Kesavara checked her tactical display. The Tarian Confederation can provide 12 cruisers and support vessels within 6 hours. But I must be honest, it will not be enough. Intelligence reports indicate the Zalthon fleet numbers in the hundreds of ships. Pelox added his report. The Solax Defense Force has 8 frigates ready for immediate deployment. We are merchants, not warriors by nature, but we will fight to protect our people. Other delegates called out their contributions. Some could offer 20 ships. Others could provide 15. A few smaller worlds could only send 5 or 6 vessels. In total, the combined fleet would number approximately 100 ships, crewed by species who had never fought together before, using different communication systems and tactical approaches. All of this would be thrown against a Zalthon horde that had spent centuries perfecting the art of destruction. Jake made his decision quickly. Get every ship you can to the rally point at New Terrace. We'll coordinate from there, and someone open a direct communication line to Earth Fleet Command. If we're going to war, we're going to need every ship we can get. The chamber emptied rapidly as delegates rushed to their vessels. Orders were given. Crews were called to battle stations. Ships began powering up their engines and preparing for the journey to New Terrace. Governor Hickstar approached Jake as the others left. Captain, you're really going to fight for all of us? For worlds you have never even visited? Jake met the Kelvar leader's compound eyes. You asked if humanity would stand with you. This is our answer. When someone needs help, we answer. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien. It doesn't matter if we know them personally. What matters is that they need help and we can provide it. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then, Jake replied. That's what makes the cost worth paying. Within the hour, the human fleet was moving at maximum speed toward New Terrace. But they weren't traveling alone anymore. Behind them came the first ships of what was already being called the Coalition of Free Worlds. Kelvar frigates with their distinctive organic-looking hulls. Tarian cruisers painted in the green and blue colors of their homeworld. Solax merchant vessels that had been hastily fitted with weapons, ships from a dozen other species, each one representing a world that had chosen to stand together against tyranny. Jake stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the streaking stars as they traveled through hyperspace. Lisa joined him at the forward viewport. "The Council is going to view this as open rebellion," Lisa said quietly. "Let them," Jake replied. "We tried doing things their way. We followed their rules. And people died while they debated and delayed, so now we'll do things our way. Which is, we fight for those who can't fight for themselves. We stand firm when others would retreat, and we never abandon an ally no matter how desperate the situation becomes." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "You know, this could mean the end of human council relations. We might find ourselves at war with the most powerful political entity in the galaxy." Jake nodded. "I know, but look at what we're building instead. A coalition based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. An alliance where worlds help each other because it's right, not because they're forced to. That's worth fighting for." Lieutenant Amy Parker spoke up from her station. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from Earth. Admiral Stevens has authorized the deployment of additional fleet elements. The battlecruiser Liberator and her battle group are en route. They'll rendezvous with us at New Terras." "How many ships in the battle group?" Jake asked. 15, sir. Including the Liberator, that gives Earth a total of 22 vessels committed to this operation." Jake did the math quickly. 22 human ships plus about 100 coalition vessels, against a Zolthon force that could number anywhere from 300 to 500 ships. The odds were terrible, but humanity had never let bad odds stop them before. "Send a message to Admiral Stevens," Jake ordered. "Tell him we're honored to have his support. And let him know that whatever happens, we're not backing down." Chris Porter turned from his station. "Sir, I'm detecting additional hyperspace signatures ahead of us. Multiple vessels dropping out of FTL near our projected exit point." Everyone on the bridge tensed. Were they about to jump directly into an ambush? Amy worked her sensors frantically. "I'm identifying the ships now. They're not Zolthon. They're independent freighters and civilian vessels. They're broadcasting a message." "Put it through," Jake ordered. Rough-looking human voice came through the speakers. "This is Captain Diana Ross of the independent freighter Golden Venture. We heard about what's happening. We're not military, but we've got ships and we've got courage." Part 5. The New Terra system looked like the end of the world when the Coalition fleet arrived. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant and felt his heart sink at what he saw on the tactical display. Over 300 Zolthon warships surrounded the planet like a swarm of insects. They were systematically destroying everything. Orbital stations burned bright against the darkness of space before exploding into clouds of debris. Civilian evacuation ships fled desperately toward the outer system, but Zolthon strike fighters chased them down one by one. On the planet below, cities were being torn apart by orbital bombardment. Millions of people were dying while the galaxy watched. "Give me a full tactical assessment," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the horror before him. Lieutenant Amy Parker worked her console quickly. "We have 96 coalition vessels at our position. The Terrian reinforcements are still jumping into the system. The Kelvar support fleet is approximately 2 hours away. The Zolthon outnumber us more than 3 to 1, sir." Commander Lisa Hayes stepped close to Jake and lowered her voice. "Captain, even with every ship we have, the mathematics are against us. We cannot win a direct confrontation against those numbers." Jake studied the enemy formation carefully. The Zolthon had arranged their fleet in a classic surrounding pattern. Their heavy capital ships formed a wall around New Terras while lighter, faster vessels hunted down anyone trying to escape. It was efficient and brutal. The formation was designed to prevent exactly what the Coalition wanted to do: mount a rescue operation. "We're not going to fight them directly," Jake said. "We're going to use tactics they won't expect." "What do you have in mind?" Lisa asked. "Humans have been fighting impossible battles for thousands of years. We've learned that when you can't match the enemy's strength, you use their own power against them." Jake opened a communication channel to the entire Coalition fleet. Representatives from dozens of species looked back at him through holographic displays. He saw Admiral Kesavara of the Terrians, her reptilian features set with determination. Governor Hickstar commanded the Kelvar ships, his compound eyes reflecting the fire of burning orbital stations. Merchant Captain Pellock stood ready with his armed freighters. Even civilian volunteers like Captain Diana Ross waited for orders. Everyone listened carefully, Jake began. The Zoltan believe they've already won. They have superior numbers and firepower. They're expecting us to either run away or die trying to break through their formation. We're going to do neither. We're going to split into 3 groups and attack in a way they won't anticipate. He brought up a tactical map and highlighted different sections. Group 1 will be led by the Valiant. We'll make a direct assault on their center formation. We need them to think we're foolish enough to attempt a frontal attack. Group 2, under Admiral Kesavara's command, will swing wide around the system and hit their flank once they commit forces to stopping us. Group 3 will consist of our lightest and fastest ships. When the Zoltan are distracted by the first 2 groups, you'll punch through their lines and begin evacuating civilians. Pellox spoke up, his small gray face showing concern. Captain Morrison, with respect, a frontal assault against those numbers is suicidal, even for humans. It would be, Jake agreed, if we actually intended to complete the attack. But we're not going to. We're going to get close enough to make them commit their reserves, then break off and lead them away from the planet. While they're chasing us, the rest of you will save those people. Admiral Kesavara's golden eyes gleamed with understanding. A feint. A distraction while the real mission succeeds. Your species has used such tactics before? Jake thought about Earth's military history. About countless battles where small forces held the line against overwhelming odds to buy time for others to escape. Yes, many times. The coalition fleet divided into its assigned groups. 30 of the heaviest warships formed up behind the Valiant. The rest spread out to their attack positions. Jake watched them go and felt the weight of command pressing down on him. He was about to lead these ships into a fight that could destroy them all. All ships, this is Morrison. He broadcast across all channels. We're about to show the Zoltan why you don't start fights with free people who stand together. Execute the plan on my mark. The Valiant's engines surged to maximum power. The ship leaped forward, leading 30 warships in a direct charge at the Zoltan center formation. Weapons began firing at extreme range. Missiles streaked through space. Railgun rounds created deadly lines through the void. The Zoltan response was immediate and overwhelming. Their biological ships turned to face the incoming threat. Green energy weapons lit up the darkness as hundreds of guns targeted the coalition's forward group. Shields began taking hits. Systems strained under the assault. Lieutenant Chris Porter called out reports. Forward shields at 50% and dropping. Hull temperature rising. Sir, they're concentrating massive firepower on us. Perfect, Jake said calmly. That means they're taking the bait. Keep firing. Keep their attention focused on us. On the far side of the system, Admiral Kesavara watched the Zoltan fleet reacting to Jake's attack. The aliens were pulling their reserve ships forward, committing more and more vessels to crush what they thought was a desperate suicide charge. She waited until the perfect moment, then gave her order. All Terrian vessels execute attack pattern Omega. Target their engines and command structures. Show them what happens when they ignore us. The Terrian fleet struck like lightning from an unexpected direction. Their weapons were designed for precision, rather than raw destructive power. Zoltan capital ships suddenly found their propulsion systems disabled. Command nodes exploded. Formations that had been organized became confused and scattered. The disciplined horde was now fighting battles on 2 fronts. While chaos erupted in the Zoltan fleet, Pellox led the evacuation group through the gaps in their defensive line. His Solax frigates weren't designed for combat, but they were fast. They raced toward the civilian ships fleeing the planet, extending their shields to protect the desperate refugees. Move quickly, Pellox urged his captains. We need to get these people to safety before the Zoltan realize what's happening. But 3 squadrons of Zoltan strike fighters had broken away to intercept the evacuation effort. The small deadly craft screamed toward the undefended civilian transports. Human fighter pilot Lieutenant Kevin Briggs saw them coming. This is Valiant Wing, we've got your back, Pellox. Get those civilians out of here. Kevin's squadron engaged the Zoltan fighters in a brutal dogfight. Space became filled with missiles and energy beams. Ships exploded in silent flashes of light. Brave pilots died to buy seconds of time for others to escape. Back with the main assault group, the Valiant was taking heavy damage. A direct hit collapsed the forward shields. Another blast tore through the port side, venting atmosphere into space. Warning alarms sounded throughout the ship. Shields are down, Amy reported. Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Casualties reported in engineering. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. We need to break off now or we won't survive. Not yet, Jake replied. Those civilian ships need more time. Another Zolthan vessel fired, and the shot hit the Valiant's starboard side. The entire ship shook violently. Lights flickered. Systems began failing. "Sir, if we take another hit like that, we're done," Chris Porter said urgently. Jake made the hardest decision of his life. "All ships execute emergency scatter pattern. Get those civilians to safety no matter what happens to us. Valiant will hold the line." Lisa looked at him with understanding and sadness. "You're planning to sacrifice us to buy them time. If that's what it takes." But before Jake could give the order, something unexpected happened. Ships began moving to join the Valiant rather than retreating. Kelvar frigates, Tarian destroyers. Even Pelox turned 3 of his merchant vessels around and headed back toward the fight. Admiral Kesevar's voice came through the communication channel. "Did you really think we would let you sacrifice yourselves alone? Humans taught us something important, Captain Morrison. We stand together or we fall together." 12 coalition ships formed a defensive line beside the Valiant. They were damaged. They were outnumbered, but they stood firm. The largest Zolthan battleship, a massive vessel nearly 2 kilometers long, broke away from the main fleet. It was coming to finish what it started. The bioship was so large that it blocked out the stars behind it. Jake opened a channel to his weapons officer. "Porter, do we have anything left that can hurt that thing?" "1 missile, sir, nuclear-tipped. I was saving it for an emergency." Jake laughed, a sound that was half desperation and half determination. "I'd say this qualifies as an emergency. Load it and prepare to fire." The coalition ships and the Zolthan battleship met in a clash that would be remembered throughout galactic history. At point-blank range, every weapon fired simultaneously. The battleship's biological hull began to rupture under the combined assault. But it kept coming, its weapons tearing through coalition vessels like paper. "Fire the missile," Jake ordered. The nuclear-tipped missile launched from the Valiant's last functioning launcher. It streaked across the void and impacted directly into the battleship's exposed core. For a moment that seemed to last forever, nothing happened.